Let me start this video off with a promise. If you want to run dungeons or any content in New World, but you're too stressed out by the social aspect of finding a team to do so in this game, join us. You don't ever need to be a part of voice chat with us. You don't even need to be a subscriber to this channel. We're here to help you reach your gaming goals. And that's what we're about. If you need anything, you can friend me in game at Bryn Zalazar, and I'm on the Noon Chaha server, and you can join our Discord if you want, and that way you'll be kept up to date with what we're doing and what's going on, and to reach out to us offline, so that way if you want to get into the game, get into the content, do anything within New World, we're happy to help. No strings attached. It doesn't matter your faction or anything. I'm serious. That's one of the reasons why I'm making this video. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Brian if you're new around here, but I wanted to start this video off with that promise because today we're discussing the concept of a group finder system within New World. And over on the official forums and even on my own community page, there's been a lot of discussion around New World and its dungeons and the need to shout for a party. So I asked this question over on the community page and you all answered very well. So we're going to explore that here in just a little bit. So as a part of this discussion topic, we're going to dive into your thoughts. That's a real key aspect I try to bring into my videos, especially these videos where I feel like I'm in the minority opinion, but we'll explore that here in just a little bit. I've always believed that the best part of video game culture is the discussion and the debate around ideas and systems within video games. But social media has completely changed how we have these type of discussions. So while we dive into this topic, just note, I'm not saying I'm right and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm asking for your opinion on these topics, and I look forward to reading your thoughts here on this specific topic, obviously in the comments. But just as a note, your comments might be used in future videos to really help represent points that I might have missed. So you don't have to agree, but just try to keep it respectful down there. Now, I'm not going to lie, this is a charged topic. It's charged because there is no shortage of opinions on whether MMOs should have a group matching system. And if you've been following this channel for any amount of time, you're sure to know that I play games with these type of systems. For example, Final Fantasy XIV is a key pillar of a game that has a content finder that will match you with other PvE players together for dungeons, raids, trials, etc. But New World is a different kind of game, and today we're going to dive into the positives and negatives of what a system like that would do to this game and to its community. For many players who've never played an MMORPG, or perhaps maybe more familiar with the theme park model of World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV, the lack of a dungeon finder is a bit jarring. And actually, when sitting down and talking with these other gamers, they flat out said that it's been stressful at first, having to put themselves out there, having to ask for help, having to use shout chat, and also looking for other players to team up with. So the first thing I want to really point out for the last decade is that gamers have been trained that these type of systems exist, and when they step into games that don't have them, it is a bit of a system shock. So to be clear and direct right up front, I do not want New World to add a dungeon finder or group finder type system that auto matches me with other players. I think the cost is too great to the game and to the genre as a whole, and I really want to explain why here with just a few points. But before I break down into why this type of system wouldn't work in New World, I want to acknowledge the strengths of the system. First and foremost, it gets people playing the game. It gets them right into the content and handles the social aspect for them. It makes it so that if you only got a little bit of time to play, running content in your MMO is possible, and you don't need to spend all that time just looking for a party. Now, I do think there is a solution that will help out new players in New World, and I'm going to share that once we break down the costs of having matchmaking added to the game. But first, let's talk about my 5 reasons why I think New World does not need a matchmaking system. So you might be asking yourself, why as a married man with 5 kids, a full-time job, not want a PvE matchmaking system in New World? And overall, it weakens the content that the devs can be able to make. It weakens the community with an I don't need you attitude. It incentivizes an instance community that takes players out of the world, aka idle and queue, and then it also increases toxicity among players. Now, systems can help prevent this, but overall, and most importantly, it weakens or removes as much player choice as possible when it comes to your character. So just as overall high level, I think this is very costly. Let's go and explore them in each detail. It weakens the content that the devs are able to make. when you matchmake, whenever you get a group of randomly skilled people, randomly geared people, randomly knowledgeable people, you're going to have to look at how can a team reasonably clear the content. You end up having to make sacrifices, and this is handled by different games in different ways. So it's not impossible, and this isn't, it completely removes what devs are able to make. It just changes the way that you have to approach content. And you see this in these type of games where, like, if you compare it to older school MMOs where there was pathways, branching, choices, all kinds of things that came into play into a piece of content. Yes, there are downsides to this. I'm not saying there are not downsides. We can talk about that maybe in a future video if you guys want. But what it does is it turns everything, it homogenizes everything, it brings it into this kind of a corridor, straight lined approach to a piece of content. So the reason that is because you have to try to accommodate an unknown set of variables. One of the reasons that instance content, a content that is like exclusive to a set party, is so powerful is because the devs know who's there. They know you have 4 people, 5 people, 8 people, whatever the number of people are there, to be able to work within the situation. So they can make mechanics around that. They can kind of build encounters that are unique and have interesting ways that you can approach it. What the best games do is they make those encounters and ways have multiple paths. If you don't have a certain type of job, maybe you want to go with, another kind of strategy. So you can end up having multiple different strategies, and that's usually the best case scenario. Not always is that the case, but typically what you end up seeing is that everything in the instance content becomes so streamlined because it has to account for that hardcore high-end raider as well as that player who's just there to auto attack their way through the dungeon. And that's a fact. That is the group that you might get paired with. Everybody kind of does assume that they're going to get that real easy clear, but they could get a very bad clear. And that kind of goes into point 4, increases toxicity among players. Now, systems can help to prevent this. Reporting systems, blocking systems, flagging systems, things of that nature. They can help reduce the overall toxicity when it comes to match-made content, but there's still that disconnect that players have. And you might even argue that the toxicity is there in terms of gatekeeping that exists within Shout Chat. And yes, that is true, but that's always existed. That isn't a new thing. It's that, group find and party finding and matching systems didn't get rid of that. They actually just continue to have it. It might have become even more passively aggressive where people will just come in and then leave. And so some people can end up wasting lots of time with that level of toxicity. So it hasn't really removed it. No system does. Toxic players are just going to be toxic, and all communities have that regardless, but that is that point, in my opinion. Now, it weakens the community with an I don't need you attitude. Here's where that kind of comes into play. If it takes a little bit of time for you to form a group or for you to join a group, and then before you go into the content, and you're in that content, you've run to that content, it didn't just auto zone you into the instance. Well, what happens if they're maybe not getting a mechanic? In the past, yes, you could, have a toxic person who's just going to leave, but they also are now losing out on that time. What happens now with instance and matchmaking content is people are more happy to kick you, or even interesting, leave themselves and hang out with the penalty because it's not worth their time. They believe, let's say that in Final Fantasy, for example, the timer is 30 minutes. They believe they'll find a group that will clear the content after the 30-minute timeout faster than they will telling you maybe go do X, Y, or Z. Especially sometimes in Final Fantasy where you telling some player, hey, I need your help, they could report you and get you in trouble. So overall, it's a weird shifting kind of world when you think of instance match-made content. I think the best quote that I heard about this was coming from the Minecraft Dungeons team, who said, when was the last time you had a good experience with a match-made party? Now, I'm sure that everybody can have an okay experience, a decent experience, but I don't, it's very rare that you have those like stellar experiences that you actually write home about. They do happen. These aren't like, completely unheard of. They are a rare situation, kind of a diamond in the rough aspect that it can happen. And when it does, it's great. And when it does, I know I'm probably going to hear about them in the comments, and I can't be more happy for you. But you actually hear about those more when you don't have that. When you do, in a way, no matchmaking system is a degree of kind of that icebreaker that you have to have at awkward situations, at business meetings and more, just to kind of get people kind of out of that like nervousness skin, and then opening up and all of a sudden realizing they have a lot in common with the other players. And it's better for everybody to work together to clear the content than it is to sit here and just dismiss them. I don't need you as an attitude is something that like has probably always existed, will probably always exist, but I believe has only been exacerbated by the fact that we've got matchmaking systems where it's just easier for me not to care about you as a player, because you could be a bot. Like, it doesn't even matter, as opposed to like being maybe like a real human being. Now, it incentivizes the instance community. It takes players out of the world. Idle in queue, anyone? Yes. You see this a lot. I'm guilty of this in games. Like, 'cause I play Final Fantasy 14. Clearly they have matchmaking. And for the longest time, I'd idle at my house, which is an instance in and of itself. And then my duty would pop. I'd run my content and I would leave. Over the course of my time with Final Fantasy 14, this made me more of a lazy kind of player. It made me disconnected from the world. And so what I switched it to do is I put myself out in the world, hanging out like in the cities, seeing lots of players running around. And that overall improved my mood when it came to feeling isolated and alone in an MMORPG. Now, this also speaks to my roots. I came from Final Fantasy 11. I like the open world. I like seeing players in the open world. I think the open world is something that we have lost over the last bit with theme park design. And I'm happy to see New World make it back. And I want people to experience that, because you can do things in the open world while you're waiting to do things in the game, even in the instance aspect within New World. Finding a party and more. Now, this kind of ties into the tools that we'll talk about that I think the game absolutely needs, but we'll get into that here in a little bit. The biggest point that I want to talk about is it weakens or removes as much player choice as possible when it comes to your character. The reason this is so critical is we see this happen with so many games, the homogenization, the removal of player choice because players make the wrong choice. And people will counter and say that there's never been real choice. It's all an illusion of choice. And to that, I say, like, that really just depends on who you are as a player. Like, if you bow down and worship a meta like it's some kind of deity, well, then, yeah, like, there's no help for you. You've been tempered. Welcome to the club. But if you like to experiment, you like to go and try different unique things, it becomes very difficult when you get match made. In fact, it's actually rude if you do that, if you get match made. If you want to experiment with a specific kind of build and you go in and you're like, hey, I'm a tank that wears no clothes because I'm testing out this thing with this piece of gear and that. Like, overall, you could negatively be impacting the people that you get match made with, and it becomes an unfair situation. So what devs do is they take away choice. They take away flexibility. Imagine matchmaking, but you can only have one weapon because your main weapon is going to define your role. Or they're going to have to come up with some kind of system that means, like, how do you define what is a healer and what is a tank and what is this? Because you can do it all different kinds of ways in New World. That would be the biggest cost of all. They would have to scale that back. They could keep it in, but then you just see the toxicity level raising up. Like, there are costs to the design of these games and these systems. And I think the biggest cost would be coming into the freedom that you have as a player. It becomes even a bigger nightmare when they think about adding weapons and more. One of the things that I'm very curious about in the life of New World, if you're watching this in the future, be sure to check out the top link in the description for more New World content. But if you're watching the, like, you know, does that slow them down in terms of the content they can make? Because then they have to start worrying about all these balance issues. With matchmaking, you got to worry about that more than anything else. In a sandbox style, you know, player driven kind of experience, they can find ways to break it, and then the devs can decide if they're going to want to go ahead and allow that away, or if they want to change it up. And I just think that the cost is so great when it comes to the design of the content and when it comes to your choice as a player of how to play the game and how to approach it. What does New World need? Those are my thoughts. I'd love to know yours, and we'll see here as we dive into it. But I think having a system that actually allows players to push recruitment for content that's not match made, but players can actually list their party and the content they're looking to do, and players can actually join in by clicking on their advertisement rather than just spam chat. Now, I think this is a tool. This is a good tool, but more and more, it's going to actually become a necessary tool as more content is added to the game, as more players come into the game. And I think that's going to be something we'll end up seeing, because overall, like, if you increase the overall amount of players that can be on a server at one time, If you increase the amount of content they can run, that's going to be more players looking for more different types of content, etc. So they're going to have to come up with a system in place that would be interesting, so that if you wanted to go run farming runs and you just wanted to post your recruitment message, people could fill in, and then once you have your party, you could go then meet up at the piece of content to run, and then you're not having to constantly spam chat. So I could see them making a changes to where you can only post so much in the recruitment chat every now and then, because as they've got goals to grow from 2,000 to 10,000 players on the server at one time, it's going to have systems in place. Otherwise it's just going to get a little bit nuts. But like I said, these are just my thoughts, and this is our discussion video. I posted this question and you all responded, and I'm overwhelmed by your responses. But if you guys, and obviously you want this type of system in the game, I'm curious if I've changed anyone's vote with my thoughts here, but let's really see what you guys had to say. 60% obviously in the yes category. I'm not surprised by this number at all. This is what I'm seeing on the forums, what I'm seeing overall online. More people really want this kind of system. And I think it's because they've been trained that they want this type of system, that, oh, these systems exist in other games, why they don't exist here. And hopefully my points in terms of what it costs to have this kind of system makes sense, but you guys can let me know, obviously. No, 11%, representing that they kill communities in MMORPGs. I'm in that 11%. Like, that's where I fall. And then maybe, perhaps the tool to post group content rather than spam chat, falling in at 29%. So looking at it overall, like adding in the tools and features, I think are good. I know that this group and this group can't even disagree on having that tool. Like, oh no, that they love seeing chat spam. They love seeing that kind of conversation. And I'm guilty of that. Like, I love seeing people talking in chat. It feels exciting. It feels connected. And the conversations get crazy and they get wild, but they also become memorable. They're moments defined by it. So let's dive right now into y'all's comments and let's see what you guys had to say. And forgive me if I mispronounce your name. It's not intentional. Alizea Rowe says, IMO spamming chat, DPS. If X doesn't meet the game more social, it should have a match finder to remove needing items to enter the dungeon. The thing is that I expect dungeon entries to be a cash shop item, so I don't expect this to be removed. Now, I don't expect these items to be cash shopped at all. They're a part of the in-game economy. It's actually a neat thing, is that running dungeon contents value somebody who wants to go run open world of fate content and get those type of drops to craft the keys needed to enter. This is such an interesting system because it integrates all people and what they're doing, and it helps value other content. So if people don't run that content and aren't making keys, the one person who is going to end up being very rich and profitable from it. But if everybody's going and doing that, then you got a lot of keys, and you got to obviously have people who want to run the dungeon. So you do need things from the dungeon that are worthwhile to go and get. So there is a symbiotic relationship here that is important to see and experience. Now, Jeff says, let's expand it. First, I think it depends on how integral the dungeons are to endgame. Second, since New World is going for such a community-oriented faction versus faction system that requires coordination within the faction, the Dungeon Finder could really mess with the overall community building. I think a looking for group system or a board where players can post dungeon runs would be fine. And that's, I'm as far as I'm willing to go is being able to post dungeon runs so people can easily kind of find like who's doing what. And if they meet whatever the requirements that the lister sets, then they can join in. If they want to add more dungeons and raids, they need to have a better group finding tool. Doesn't get so descriptive alone, so I can't decide if you're trying to do matchmaking here or if it's just a matter of posting, but thank you so much for the comment regardless. Brad says, it would make it easier to find games, but I like that you can choose who you want for their group. Some dungeons are better with 2 healers or a tank healer hybrid or a DPS healer hybrid. You wouldn't know what you were getting if you could just queue with 1 healer and 1 tank. Couldn't agree more. You don't know what you're going to get. A lot of people always assume they're going to get something great, but there's plenty of examples where that does not happen. I think there's Reddit threads dedicated to all of that. Greynat says, honestly, having some kind of matchmaking feature is a deal breaker for me these days. As an example, it's one of the big reasons I can't even stick around for Guild Wars 2. The fact that Guild Wars 2 has dungeons but no matchmaking system, it's such a turnoff for me, and it shows the community too. Anytime I even wanted to do a dungeon, it took me forever to get the people, and then nobody wanted to do it because it was too inexperienced to run the dungeon. So Guild Wars 2 dungeon system was extremely broken, IMO. I honestly don't even know why Guild Wars 2 has dungeons if this is how they're going to go about implementing them. Matchmaking seems to be the best way to do dungeons these days. Looks like somebody replied to them. There's a party finder for dungeons. You just post the dungeon you want and let it feel like a duty finder. For me, it took 3 minutes to find a party in my first dungeon, and with that, it was being content people don't run because fractals are just better dungeons. So what's interesting about this is absolutely right. That's how I got into my first dungeon. It's about posting that you want to run the content, and then people kind of find it rather than kind of spamming chat, because spamming chat requires that you're looking at chat. So you have to end up sending the message multiple times. It's just easier to kind of put in like, hey, I want to do this. But rather than auto matching, you can set parameters. And I think that's just overall a better system. Dusk says, I dislike auto matching tools, making tools. Jumping into a queue and getting thrown in with random players is not always the best experience. 14 did it quite well, while WoW's version creates a terrible environment. But I don't enjoy either version. You just run through the dungeons with little known interaction with fellow players, and may as well just have been NPCs for how much I interacted with the queue party members. The only advantage of the system is convenience. I prefer the third option for that reason. A group posting tool seems to be the middle ground when group finder queue, and nothing at all. But it does require more time and effort, yes, but you have to interact with the players you intend to play with, and it's that kind of point. This always had a better experience in groups that you took time to build with that group. While I was looking for group system as a possible example of a wide audience with that's familiar with. Is that a perfect solution? No. Every proposal has its advantages and disadvantages. I just prefer posting tool far more than the other options. Accidentally disliked, but we fixed it there. So is this like Final Fantasy 11 where you just flag LFG and search for people? Because that kind of sucked. So yeah, pretty much, except for there's no flag that you kind of set over your head. Corvex says, I like how it is. They just need to keep the key stones and nothing else. I don't. The game is meant for you to spam the dungeon runs anyhow to get out of PvP. If you don't like PvP and maybe New World isn't the right MMO for you, I mean, I don't mean you, Brian. And then Jeremy says the PvP isn't very good. LOL. It never has in any game before level cap. The wars are unbalanced, weapons are unbalanced, and the weapons are incomplete. I disagree with Jeremy. I think it's been a fun experience overall, but everybody's allowed to have their own opinion on that regards. I'm just hearting all the comments here today. Chris thinks there should be an option. Warrior of Light says, I definitely said this on my stream. It definitely does. I don't like that you have to craft the item to enter the dungeon. I love that aspect. Like in that regards, I love how it becomes an economy piece of the game. The game isn't all about dungeons, right? Like this isn't New World Dungeon Runner. This is New World, in which that dungeons are a piece of the content along with open world dungeons, along with everything. And I want, especially with systems, to always kind of fall back on the player economy so that somebody can choose to supply the items needed or whatnot, so that you as a player can choose whether that's worth your time to go farm, or if you want to just, purchase that, go into the thing and get loot in which that you could use to turn into money or more. So it obviously requires balance. I'm not saying that this is this is the easy option. I'm saying it's the disciplined option that leads to long-term success, a long-term appreciation for the game, because it allows players to really get invested in the world. It's not a place you visit, it's a place you live, in that regards. All right. VC says New World needs content. That's what it needs. It has content. If you rushed already to 60 and you're at endgame, I hate to break it to you, endgame started at level 1. That's just where it is. That's how it rolls. And so if you rush to 60 because other games trained you to do that, yeah, I'm sorry. Like, you're going to probably, have to wait, or maybe go level up some other stuff. Maybe do a second character. I don't know. I'm no judgment in this case, Vic, but more content's on the way. Like, we've always known this. I think the game launched in a really good state. But I'm obviously a fan. Peter says, no, just use the chat, talk with people, enriches the experience. Otherwise you have people queuing up as tank for healer for speedy queue, then changing their weapons once in. Needs a flagging system so people can look at what's out there and what's to pick. Auto queue is garbage. I agree. Like, he's saying it like pretty direct. Like, auto matching, it's so costly. I don't think a lot of people have really considered what they're losing, because they get their thing, they run in, and then leave. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's just not for me. Big Bill says people are just lazy and the map isn't that big, and there's plenty of teleportation menus to break up immersion just to be in the world. And that's how it's meant to meet new people. The world will be the same if they added mounts and flying. All right. I don't get the context. Let's see here. Jeremy says the question wasn't about traveling. It was about group finding tool. Read comprehension 101. Oh man. I'm hitting like on all the video, all the comments, but yeah, I think Big Bill here misread the poll here. So that's what I wanted to talk with you guys today about. That's what you guys had to say about this. As always, I'm curious about your thoughts, especially as I weighed in with mine in this video. Sound off below so we can have, continue this conversation going forward. I'm looking forward to your feedback and thoughts. And that's it. Thanks for guys for being here. This has been a fun one. I really hope you enjoyed. So obviously at the end of this, what do you guys think of the video and its format? I really hope you've enjoyed it. And if you did, leave a comment, a like, send this video maybe to your grandma or maybe your veterinarian. They might be confused, but you never know. They might thank you too. Also, if you're new here and this video gets you to hit that subscribe button, let me know in the comments so I can welcome you to the Soul Nation. But if you're a returning subscriber, you've just unlocked a brand new title, Slayer of the One True Dragon. Be sure to rep that in the comments or in game whenever you log in. With that, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for being awesome. And I'll see you in my next video. But until then, take care.
A little off topic, but I just want to say thank you for providing me a friendly, fun, and optimistic community. Baby. Coming from an MMO community filled with toxicity, this is an amazing breath of fresh air. Keep it up, baby. Oh, yeah.